much as we could. It was heartbreaking to know that the kids who are going to go through this surgery alter their lives forever because somebody told them that was the right thing to do. There's girls out there that will never have children. There's boys that will never have sons. How as a society do we do this to ourselves? So we know that transgender people that suffer from some of this, there is about a 70 to 80% chance that they also suffer from autism. Huge percent. We're not dealing with a mental health issue. We're telling them the only way they can fix themselves is to mutilate their body. What genius thought of this? Well, obviously not a genius. How can we do that? How can anyone think this is normal or right? So 70% deal with autism. We also know that in the last 40 years, testosterone in men has decreased. We have more feminization of men than what we had before. I don't know the scientific reason. Some say it's because of our diet, other issues. Vaccines. Could be a lot of things. A lot of things. So, you look at our society and we're having less and less kids, and there are problems that are going to arise from that. We get past that baby boom cycle, and our population will be that stiff until we either change some or have some serious change of heart and start having kids again. The other option, and the Democrats know this, is to import people south from our southern border. We don't have enough people here to maintain our population. We don't have enough people in the future to maintain our country. And if all of the people that are flooding across the border now is still not keeping up with the death rate that we have on right now. So if you want to help out, tell your kids, grandkids, whoever, to start having families. To start putting their faith in God. Because what we did is we said, you know what? If you want happiness out of life, you've got to have the next boat, you got to have the next four-wheeler, you got to have the next toy. That's not where happiness is. It's not in material possessions. It's in a family. We need to change that mentality in our world. Thank you.
I'm Marilyn Crew, and I normally live in Moorhead. Just have a camera here, but there's a lot of things I'm really hopeful about, and I'm just so thankful. I had to come to this town meeting because the last town meeting was with Rod Kupik in Moorhead, and he is just a very evil man. And Heather walked out on us because when there's a crowd, she won't even join us. We have never had a town meeting with her. So, but there's some things I want to say that I'm really hopeful about. That I worked with elections, and I worked right at the college. And 1/3 of the people that came in were college kids that had never voted before. They were trained in a workshop on how to vote, and we had no way of showing that they voted any other place besides that. So like, were you looking at, I thought of that when you said St. Cloud, because they've got a campus too. The Democrats were the colleges, and they are very masterful at it, and they train the kids, and the kids would come in and say, can I look at my cell phone? I don't really know the people that are here, but I'll look at my phone and vote. And that's exactly what they did, and they registered that day, 1/3 of them, and at that date point, we had no time of showing it. Okay, my second point, because I'm really getting hopeful about everybody waking up. I'm very, very hopeful. I know they've showed it around here, the civic education, biblical citizenship videos. If you haven't seen them yet, go to them. They're excellent. And that's the second thing that I'm really hopeful about, is that more and more of our people are starting to learn what's constitutional and unconstitutional, what we can do more of. I know a lot of the churches are afraid to speak up, but if you're starting to watch these biblical citizenships, you start to know that more and more of the pastors that are fearful don't have to be. There's a lot more that they could be doing, and getting fired up. So that's my second thing I'm really hopeful about. Another thing came out of California, the Election Integrity Commission out of California. This one woman alone put on 50,000 miles because she was silenced on her phone and social media. So she traveled in a car with her dog and connected all the old-time Tea Party people and started uniting and asking them at every election, what do you think went on with your election? What went on? And they made a huge documentation of all the different things. So we know that things aren't right with the elections, but, and as she said, it's not one thing. They have many, many, many different tactics. And that's why we aren't doing what we're doing. Able to do it is because, one, the Dominion machines, and, you know, of course, even Canada, who makes them, won't even use them. And then two, an example in Moorhead is our election judges, our head judges, are one Democrat and one independent. The ones that were Republicans got moved down or moved out. That's so illegal. And if you go to that Election Integrity Commission out of California, they list at least 20 different things that go on, and they say that they've gone on in the state of Minnesota. That's like Mark Elias was one of the people that did the training. They were trained here for some of the same things that California is. They just have a really good job of starting to identify it. And I am just really hopeful for the young people, like I think of Eric Michelin that's been out there starting to regrouping, educating people how to vote, educating people on their citizenships. And I'm hopeful, and you guys make me really feel, I'm very thankful that you've spoken tonight, and but I want to make sure there's a lot of hope in this, because we are discouraged at this point in time. We are in the valley right now, but I know that we can come out of this. There's a lot of highly educated, very quality Minnesotans out there that are waking up, and we have to wake up even our Democratic neighbors that are sleeping, and say, is this really what you wanted when you voted for a Democrat? You know.
I think, great. I think part of that is we just have to educate people that this is not the Democratic Party that their grandparents voted for. This is not the party of JFK anymore. This is communism, this is socialism, this is not what they voted for. And I mean, that's our job. We have to educate people on that. So.
Hi, my name is Thomas Halverson. I'm a Democrat. I agree with a lot of the things that you said, especially when it comes to the gender ideology thing. I just wanted to say that I know somebody who got breast cancer when she was 29, and she was on MNsure, and she couldn't get a mammogram because MNsure will only cover mammograms for women who are 40 and above. So MNsure would not pay for a mammogram, and she would have had a head start on her treatment if that had happened. But now, I was listening to NPR the other day, and they had a show called Cult to Mind. And it was about the wonderfulness of gender-affirming care. And there was a woman who came to Minnesota, because we're the state that's the refuge for this now. And she talked about how she was finally able to get the double mastectomy that she needed to feel comfortable in her body. So I don't really understand why MNsure will cover like a $10,000 surgery to remove a healthy woman's breasts, but they won't cover, you know, a $70 mammogram for, you know, women who are in their 20s and 30s. Doesn't make sense to me. I mean, again, Democrats, it used to be about preventative care. I don't know, these surgeries, you know, we have data that show that this does not lead to better health outcomes for the people who do this. The drugs don't help people. We've got all this data. I mean, I really respect that you talk about the way that, you know, you teach your kids that you're born the way God wants you to be. You're born, like that's, I completely respect that argument, but also, the science doesn't support this either. Sexual dimorphism is a thing. Biologically, it doesn't make sense to say that. Anyway, so I completely respect the religious argument, but also be aware that the science is not behind this either. All of the European countries that started this are turning against it now because they're doing systematic reviews of the evidence. no control groups, horrible methodology, conflicts of interest, really terrible outcomes. It's cult mentality where you're not allowed to admit that you didn't like it because then everybody that, became your new family turns against you and then you're a pariah and then, you cut off your family, now your new family. It's, the people who are in this, they can't admit how much it's ruined their lives. So really, I'm with you on this. I really appreciate that you guys were pushing against this in St. Paul earlier this year. Do you know who Christina Lusk is? Christina Lusk is a man who was arrested in 2019. He just sued the Minnesota Department of Corrections and they settled the lawsuit for $495,000 and now he's going to be transferred to a women's facility in Shakopee. So what is your position on men being transferred to women's prisons, I guess is my question.
No, if you're a biological male, then you belong in a male prison. And that's happening in our schools too, and that's a huge problem. You can't change your DNA. If you are a biological male, you should be in a facility for biological males.
I mean, I certainly think any female inmate in this prison should have a say in whether or not
Yes.
they're gonna have a cellmate that is
Yes.
a man. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. And same with any little girl in the school locker room should have a say in who's in that locker
It
room.
makes no sense. It makes, again, like, I'm a big Democrat. I agree with like less than 50% of a lot of the things you guys are saying. But like when it comes to gender identity ideology, 100%. Another thing, I was curious, what happened to Representative Don Gilman earlier this year? There was some kind of
Sure.
confrontation on the floor.
Yes.
Could you talk about that?
I can.
Were you there?
Yes. So Don Gilman, she's a Republican representative from Dassel, Minnesota. If you don't know where that is, it's kind of by Hutchinson. And she and myself and maybe 5 other House members were very outspoken about some language that the Democrats were trying to remove from the Human Rights Act that talked about pedophilia being a protected class. The Democrats wanted to remove that language because it was right next to language that talked about people that are gay or bisexual, and they said that they didn't want them to be classified or put into a group with pedophilia. Okay, so they removed that. We, the Republican Party in the House, offered an amendment to have that language that was stricken to be put back into the Human Rights Act in a different area. So we could have that separation, so they could be happy that it wasn't classifying gay people or bisexual people as pedophiles, but also still keep it in there. That passed the House floor 126-0. Don Gilman had retweeted something on Twitter that upset the author of that bill, who is a transgender member in the House. Lee Finke, he's a man that is now a girl. And he came onto the House floor and verbally accosted Don Gilman during a floor session. He is 6'3", 6'4". She is 5'2", 5'4". It scared her. And she's a fighter. I mean, she's not somebody that would be intimidated easily. And she was really shooken up about that. And nothing was done about it by leadership for a week, 5 days. That's what happened with Don Gilman. Eventually, they all sat down together. Finke offered an apology to Gilman. Gilman offered an apology for retweeting what she tweeted, and that it hurt his feelings. And leadership was there to help oversee that conversation, but that's what happened.
Okay. And then, I was just wondering, are you familiar with WPATH? WPATH? WPATH is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. They're the big lobby group that is creating the guidelines that all these gender clinics are supposed to be following. Earlier in 2022, they have a document called the Standards of Care. The 8th document introduced a new kind of gender identity, so it's no longer just, men want to be women, women want to be men. Eunuchs. Eunuchs are now well, it's something that they're saying is a valid choice of gender identity. I just wanted to say that when the NHS, if you're familiar with the NHS in Scotland, in the UK, they have the National Health Service. When they were doing some kind of audit of the gender services offered in their country, when they found out about this document, this is what they said. In its new guidelines, which were released in September, it calls for eunuch to be recognized as an official gender identity, and for surgical intervention to be considered for those who wish to eliminate masculine physical features. Its guidelines provide a link to a eunuch fetish website that contains graphic depictions of child abuse so extreme that when they were examined by the NHS cybersecurity staff, they recommended it was reported to police